Good morning to you from my car in the middle of a field. This is the title this morning of my word for you. The new God on the block and the science of Satan. The new God on the block and the science of Satan. People are desperate to place their trust in something. And when I woke up this morning, the word trust was the one that was on my mind. And we're being told all the time, aren't we? To trust the science. Trust the science. Well, I got talking to a chap I often see at the supermarket. He's an ex-solicitor, ex-lawyer, and what you call it in your country, an attorney. And we started just generally talking about holidays and things like that. And then we got onto the subject of the you-know-what. And he told me that he's had his 3, and he was quite happy with that. I just said that, well, that's not for me, thank you very much. And I tried to explain why. And the response I got really was this: I trust the government. Well, for a man who I believe is highly intelligent, people seem to have lost their minds, don't they, to trust. Trusting in certain areas, trusting in certain things. And I want to talk about something that I knew about when I lived in Africa. And it's quite significant, I think, for today. I'd like to just share some of this with you. It's an article. And it's all about what's known in Africa as the Sangoma. And the Sangoma basically is the same thing as a medicine man, I think, in the Native American parlance, or a witch doctor. I'd just like to share some points with you about what is a Sangoma and how the Sangoma operates and how relevant it is for today. A Sangoma is I'll just read to you some short sentences here. Sangoma is a highly respected healer among the Zulu people of South Africa. And I actually lived quite close to what area known as Zululand. And I was quite familiar with the Zulu people, very humble and very lovely folk. But amongst the unbelieving Zulu, the Sangoma was very active. And it says here that the Sangoma diagnoses, prescribes, and often performs the rituals to heal a person physically, not just physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And so the Sangoma is involved in the whole healing process. Now, of course, this is what we might call, I don't know whether I'm correct here, holistic medicine. The idea of healing the whole body. And as we know, the new preventative, as it were, that has come out, that we now stick in here, also has this idea, doesn't it, of becoming as we talk about the transhuman aspect of it, being able to go into our bodies and find, not just fight disease, but find disease, and then actually start to eradicate it within ourselves. Anyway, the Sangoma, the power of the Sangoma. It says here, in Zulu tradition, God is rarely involved in human affairs and is not a common cause of illness. However, God delegated many administrative functions to the ancestors. And this is the emphasis amongst the African people, the native African, of the power of the ancestor. And it says that they're constantly involved in the world of the living. Well, trace that back to the time that Jesus spoke about the demons. And as we know, if we go back to the book of Genesis, the fallen angels and the spirits that were let loose in the earth at that time. But they were also responsible for something else, which is quite interesting about the Sangoma. Not just disease, it says here, that they also were responsible for making sure that people abided by the ethical standards of their community. So in other words, the groupthink of the community had to be contained within a certain type of thinking. And of course today, what are we seeing? We're seeing a new groupthink. George Orwell's 1984 really made that quite a clear emphasis. The groupthink, that the Sangoma was responsible for this, the witch doctor. And basically was talking here about mind control, because it says here further on that the Sangoma also functions similarly to a psychologist, understanding the powers and workings of the human mind. Those of you that have often put in the comments to me about MK Ultra and the different conditioning techniques that have been used by the US Defense Department since the 1950s. All these things that go to control the human mind, taking control of the soul. And so, it says here, when witchcraft has already struck specific rituals, this is for the Sangoma, relying heavily on the use of medicinal plants, known for their spiritual cleansing powers, and they conduct these rituals to neutralize what they believe are malevolent forces. And so, the expected result is the return of harmony and peace and health in the life of the person affected. Peace and safety is what they're shouting. The Sangoma can provide peace and safety. Yes, it says here that the Sangomas are regarded as soul doctors, because they can determine the specific part of a person's soul that is out of balance. And again, it goes back to the medication, doesn't it, that we're seeing developed now, the modernized sorcery that can detect the particular thing that is genetically wrong with you, that genetically that you'll have the potential to develop in the future. And another interesting thing here, we often talk about the medical bedside manner of a doctor. Is a doctor soothing and convincing in his bedside manner? My wife was unfortunate to suffer a lump in the breast many years ago, and of course that put her into a lot of anxiety. And she was faced with the doctor, and the doctor said to her, well, it's 50-50. It could go one way or the other. It could be cancer or it might not be. And she was quite devastated by his response, that he seemed quite callous or quite cold about the fact that he was giving her such a difficult fact to swallow. And it says here that the Sangoma have very good communication skills, because they have to be able to effectively listen to the patient to gain both information and trust. And then they must be able to clearly respond to the patient in a respectful manner. So to be able to develop a relationship with the patient, to be able to give soothing words to the patient. A bit like our politicians today, isn't it? The power of sorcery, and also at work through the so-called scientists that stand up on podiums today, giving us soothing words. Sometimes they give us these endless graphs and things like that. Maybe they don't give us soothing words, but many people now are putting their trust in that science, telling us that that's the only method that we can be healed by. I saw this today in the comments, a lady saying how she's confused by the fact that people are getting sick by this disease. You know what I'm talking about, the one that begins with the C. People are getting sick, and yes, I know people myself who have suffered. My own daughter got sick with it. But the whole thing here isn't about that. This is the fact that there are no other treatments available other than what they're pushing. You know, you've got great difficulty to actually get the one that begins with I, you know, the one I'm talking about, the one that begins with H. These are effective treatments that if they were given early, apparently they would then mitigate the effects of the disease. But that's not happening. So as the Zulu people turn to the Sangoma for their healing, so people are turning to one particular thing for their healing. And so the Sangoma takes the power, doesn't he? And he's a respected person in the community. We can't disagree with these scientists because they know what they're talking about. This is coming from respected and intelligent people. Much the same, I suppose, again, if I hark back to Nazi Germany. We can't differ with the message we're being given because it's going to be for our good, our ultimate good. So it says here, and this is very interesting, please bear with me. The source of the Sangoma's power is called Umbelini. And Umbelini is said to feel like a hot, coiled snake ascending the spine. I think this is also known in Far Eastern religion as the Kundalini. Correct me if I'm wrong. And so it says these Sangomas can access the knowledge of the universe, past, present and future, which is said to be hidden in a lake in the spirit world. Of course, we know all about lakes, don't we? The book of Revelation talks about that lake in the end of time. And so these people were basically put up as gods. And this is what we're really seeing today, isn't it? Let's have a look at some scripture. If I can find it. I haven't got a marker for this one, but it's in the book of Zechariah. Please bear with me. This is from Zechariah chapter 10, and it's verse 2. For the idols have spoken vanity, and the diviners have seen a lie, and have told false dreams. They comfort in vain. Therefore they went their way as a flock. They were troubled because there was no shepherd. Here it's talking, of course, about Israel. And, of course, the Sangoma seems to represent himself as a shepherd, but he's a false shepherd. We've spoken about the false shepherds before. And Isaiah chapter 8, we often speak of this particular one because we often think of the noises of the computer. And I was talking to another brother in the Lord recently who was doing some work for me on the computer. And he was saying that, this is just an aside actually, that he definitely felt there was witchcraft involved in the manufacture of the microprocessor. To what extent, I don't know. Maybe there are people here online and in the comments that could probably tell me, those who maybe work in Silicon Valley or places like that. Isaiah chapter 9, and it's verses 19 to 20. Listen to this. Sorry, it's chapter 8, forgive me. And when they shall say unto you, seek unto them that have familiar spirits, and unto wizards that peep and that mutter. There we go, the peeping and the muttering of the computers of today. Should not a people seek unto their God, for the living, to the dead, to the law and to the testimony? If they speak not according to this word, it is because there is no light in them. There's no light in them. And so the wizards that peep and mutter, the consulting, this is where the problem comes in, is who do we consult? Galatians 5, 19 to 21 says this. Now the works of the flesh are manifest, which are these: adultery, fornication, uncleanness, lasciviousness, idolatry, witchcraft, hatred, variance, emulations, wrath, strife, seditions, heresies. Envyings, murder, drunkenness, revellings, and such like, of the which I tell you before, as I have also told you in times past, that they which do such things shall not inherit the kingdom of God. Emulations, sorceries, witchcraft, things that upset the soul and upset the spirit. Isaiah 47, 9 to 13, another illustration here. But these two things shall come to thee in a moment, in one day, the loss of children and widowhood. They shall come upon thee in their perfection, for the multitude of thy sorceries, and for the great abundance of thine enchantments. For thou hast trusted in the wickedness. Thou hast said, none seeth me. Thy wisdom and thy knowledge it hath perverted thee. And thou hast said in thine heart, I am, and none else beside me. Therefore shall evil come upon thee. Thou shalt not know from whence it riseth, and mischief shall fall upon thee. Thou shalt not be able to put it off, and desolation shall come upon thee suddenly, which thou shalt not know. Stand thou with thine enchantments, you see, and with the multitude of thy sorceries, wherein thou hast laboured from thy youth. If so be thou shalt be able to profit, if so be thou mayest prevail. Thou art wearied in the multitude of thy counsels. Let now the astrologers, the stargazers, the monthly prognosticators stand up and save thee from these things that shall come upon thee. You see, the evil is about to reveal itself in full measure. I don't believe that that's happened yet. I believe it's about to happen. And the coiled snake of the Sangoma has never left, has it? You know the symbol, I don't know if it's a medical symbol here. I think it's, again, I'm doing this from memory. It's a sword with the coiled snake around it. And it's a medical symbol. Again, I'm talking off the top of my head here. Somebody again can put this in the comments. The power of the snake, the power of the coiled snake. And as we know the end of the story, Revelation chapter 18, verse 23. And the light of a candle shall shine no more at all in thee. And the voice of the bridegroom and the bride shall be heard no more at all in thee. This is referring to Babylon. For thy merchants were the great men of the earth, for by thy sorceries were all nations deceived. The deception of the Sangoma, the deception of sorceries, the trusting in the science, not questioning anything, just saying, well, I trust the government. The power of the government. No, this is the power of Satan. This is the science of Satan. When men who have good cures are suppressed, and it's told to you that only this will suffice. Only the word of the Sangoma will count. So today, we have to beware, we have to be aware, and we have to stand up in the strength of the Lord to resist. And at the same time, look to the Lord only for our health. For He is our true healer, and He will deliver us in the end to a wonderful kingdom. Have a blessed day.